What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Conversation Station. This episode, we're going to be reviewing the King of the Hill Revival series. It premiered on August 4th, 2025 on Hulu, and it's been getting amazing reviews ever since then, and I've been enjoying it a lot, so I just wanted to talk about it, go through what I've seen so far, and what I hope for if we get to see any more. Now, with all the reboots and remakes and relaunches, I mean, studios have to be a little nervous. Just putting all this stuff out, you never really know if it's going to hit or if the old fans are going to appreciate it or if any new fans are going to latch on. This season seems to have hit every single nail on the head that it was going for. Nothing but positive reviews and good things being said in every comment section I see under every post. So that definitely points to, people really loving this series. I mean, you can have the 100% or whatever on Rotten Tomatoes and all that good stuff, but just seeing like a general consensus of people saying, yeah, I really enjoy this, and it reminds me of the old one while being so good at being this new thing. And I think that's really important. I think it's really awesome to see, and I think, like I said, it creates that message of, this is a really good, well-received show. And you don't have to just trust those, movie sites like, Rotten Tomatoes or anybody like that, when you can just trust certain people's opinion. Now, this revival picks up 15 years after the original, set in 2025 Ireland, with Hank and Peggy returning back from Saudi Arabia, and Hank has been working for Aramco, and his love of propane took him all around the world, or obviously to Saudi Arabia, and they lived a very good life, as we see later in the show, and he was treated basically like a king. They wanted him back really bad, and he was just a really good worker, and good work is respected and hard work is appreciated, and I think obviously out there, Hank was probably the hardest worker they had. So it was awesome to see that, no matter where you go, at least in that show, that hard work pays off and it can take you anywhere and it can open up opportunities. And it was just cool to see Hank in such a different setting and environment from Texas, even though he really did enjoy it over there. And to see how much he enjoyed it over there was actually really a big surprise, being that we know that he loves Texas and he loves America. But one thing he loves, I wouldn't say more, but at the same level, is propane. And if you can, have his love of propane and let him do what he loves to do, then I think, that's his baseline of happiness. And as long as his family's happy and he can do his propane, there's really no better place on earth that he could be. And I don't think it matters whether he's in Saudi Arabia or Texas. Now, we have some awesome old callbacks to the show, which things like Peggy not really knowing, how to speak the language, and she, speaks Arabic to a cab driver when she returns home, and he basically is like, oh, maybe it's a different dialect. And, so basically it's kind of the same way she would do with Spanish, and she's obviously annoying the native speakers and not getting stuff right. So that was pretty awesome to see that they were willing to give her that same fake confidence that, she was over there probably irritating the locals. So that little fun little callback, stuff like that is just really cool to see that the characters stayed consistent. Slowly but surely, we get the whole gang back together with Dale, Boomhauer, Bill, and Hank, everybody getting back together and, just meeting up. And it's really cool. And that first episode was really awesome. It really did feel like a, sort of homecoming. Getting to see Bobby all grown up and have his own restaurant and doing his own thing and being a hard worker with an extremely great work ethic, just like Hank, is really cool. To see that he grew up to not necessarily go after his comedy career, that's kind of a bummer, but you understand that people grow up and, your dreams gotta go by the wayside sometimes, and you gotta kind of do what you can versus doing what you really want to do. But it seems like Bobby still has that love of what he does, because he genuinely loves and appreciates his restaurant. The restaurant is co-owned, or part ownership is, main ownership is Chang Wasanasong and his dad, Ted. So that obviously is awesome that they brought that dynamic back into it, where Chang was obviously Bobby's bully growing up and kind of his adversary, and now they're working together. Chang still being the rich, jerky college boy who owns the restaurant and doesn't really do any work, and Bobby's obviously the regular, hardworking kid who does everything he's supposed to and just has to work hard to get it. And it's really funny to see these two kind of working together, but not really. But it's just really cool to see that, Bobby did something and still has that passion. And that's something that obviously Hank most likely instilled in him, just having his love of propane and things like that. Now, a really funny instance happens when Hank goes to finally eat at Bobby's restaurant. Bobby tells Hank that he uses propane at the restaurant, which is a lie. Bobby uses a certain type of charcoal that's specific to the type of cuisine that he's making because it is a fusion restaurant. When Hank arrives and finds out that he's using charcoal, obviously it's a big deal. Basically, Bobby's anxiety leading up to that is just kind of what makes it such an interesting ordeal. I mean, obviously everybody knows that Hank's going to freak out because it's not propane and it's charcoal. When Bobby's telling his helper cook that basically the reason that his dad's going to flip out, the cook's being like, oh man, you're making a big deal about this. Isn't your dad not really going to flip out? Bobby says like one of the coolest things, and he's like, sir, my dad loves 4 things: America, my mom, me, and propane. He's like, and depending on how the day was, propane would outrank me. And like that, just that knowing of his dad, like he knows his dad so well.
Place, and I hadn't told my dad that I use Japanese Binchiton coals to cook instead of propane.
So what?
Emilio, my dad loves 4 things in life: America, my mom, me, and propane. And when I was a kid, depending on the week, propane would be above me on the list.
That was a really awesome scene. I really loved that little speech. I just thought that was really funny, but also really cool. And then when Hank finally did find out that the charcoal, that he was using charcoal, everybody's like, oh God. And Dale's like, here we go, because they all know he's going to, do some kind of speech about propane being better than charcoal. And that was a really awesome episode that, they've handled before with, Hank dealing with charcoal and propane, but this is another way to kind of touch back on that, past issue while still handling it really with a new situation. But it was really cool, and like I said, handled really well, and that little, little speech from Bobby saying, like, I know my dad. My dad loves these things, and that's just the way he is. I thought that was really cool, and I just think it shows a bit more of that maturity on Bobby's level, and I thought that was really cool. But honestly, it's just nice seeing everybody again. We've seen Min, we've seen Connie, we've seen Bobby, we've seen Joseph, we've seen Dale, Boomhauer, and Bill. But it's just nice. Every character that does come back is just, really cool to see. Connie and Bobby obviously still have a lot of chemistry. A big question when this show was coming back is, will Bobby and Connie be together? The reveal was that obviously they weren't, and they hadn't seen each other in a while. But it's obviously leading back to them that they have a lot of love between each other still, and that, the heart wants what the heart wants kind of thing, and they're pulling towards each other, so the show's kind of going in that direction of, will they, won't they type of thing. Even though Connie's like lightly dating Chang at this point, that kind of seems like a relationship that's built more around pleasing their parents versus actually being in a relationship and, being together. And she tells Bobby at one point that he's essentially husband material. So it's just really cool to see that they kept that relationship intact. And there is a scene, where they're doing karaoke where they shoot back to the old show, and they show you just little flashes of it. And I just thought that was really, really special. That part kind of was awesome. Just gives you the chills, because it just reminds you of all the old stuff. But it was really awesome, and it's really cool to see this storyline progress. And it is, like I said, we don't know if they'll end up together. We don't know. And even if they do, will they end up together forever? You never know how it's going to go. But it's definitely a really interesting storyline, and I'm glad they made it that way in order to play with it. Now, obviously, this season or show is returning with the loss of a few voice actors. Jonathan Joss, John Redcorn's voice actor, was killed this year. Johnny Hardwick, the voice actor for Dale, passed away in 2023. And as well as Brittany Murphy, who played Luann. Her character, Luann, is referenced respectfully, and they did not recast her. I believe Johnny Hardwick voices up to 6 episodes, and then he was replaced by Toby Huss. Well, not replaced, but he took over just to have the episodes finished so Dale could still be a part of the show. And I'll just say, Dale is an awesome part of the show, all 6 episodes, and I'm sure the rest. I'm on episode 7 right now, so I didn't even need to finish the show to know that I wanted to do a review. I'm finishing the show so slowly just because I enjoy it so much. I'm coming home from work and just kind of throwing an episode on and eating dinner and just really enjoying it and watching it and trying to just, take it all in, take in all the references and all the fun stuff. And it's just a really fun show, and all the fun, the jokes and the storylines and stuff like that. But it's just one I really want to span out and take my time with. Because I don't know if we're going to get another season or when this next season will be if we do. So, it's just something I want to enjoy. Now, a big part of what I was wondering with this series is how many technology jokes were they going to do? How much of today's world was really going to be the internet world, be inserted into King of the Hill. And to my surprise, it's not as much as I thought. Obviously, they still are a bit shocked. You know, it's a bit of a cultural shock by how many changes there are, and things are just different, and so much internet. But it's not as referenced as I thought it would be, honestly. With adult animation, there just seems to be a lot of heading towards that way. Like, if it's on the internet and it's funny, you're most likely going to see it in the adult animation show. Specifically, not to take away from King of the Hill at all, but Family Guy. Family Guy has been doing that in a lot of its recent episodes. It's just every joke is from Twitter, and it's like, or it's a YouTube reference, or a reference to somebody being a YouTuber. And again, it's not terrible, it's not a bad thing, but when it's every single joke, one of the reasons I watched Family Guy was because of the old references, the references to stuff from the 80s and the 90s, and the stuff that I didn't really understand that I could like ask my mom about and she would laugh about it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I like. And I know it can't stay the same forever, but I just wish they would do a little bit more references. And with this King of the Hill, there are a few, not references, but just more of Hank loving the old-fashioned stuff, you know, the down-home stuff. There is a bit where they come back from Saudi Arabia, and Peggy's basically asking him, like, did we make a mistake coming here? You know, coming back with everything being so different. And, you know, Hank's just going through all these different things, and he's just getting so frustrated, and, you know, he's realizing how different things were. And back in Saudi Arabia, the little town that they built for him was more like, you know, the old Texas that he knew than the Texas that he is in now. And it just became something that he doesn't recognize. But, you know, by the end of the episode, you know, so many things happen that, you know, Hank ends up outside the Megalomart just chatting, just talking to some other Texans, some other guys about just some yard work and just some random stuff, you know, just good old-fashioned stuff. And Hank's just comfortable, completely in his element, and other guys come up and start talking, and you just see, like, that's where Hank is supposed to be. He loves Texas. He loves home. And it's just like, that's one of those awesome scenes. It's like, he's home. He ain't going back. He's not going back to Saudi Arabia. And that was really, I really love that scene. It's little shots like that that's just like, man, I love Hank. He's so awesome. And them together, Hank and Peggy really have been like just such a cool team to watch. And now that they're in their retirement phase and seeing how they, you know, are when that, it's just really cool. Peggy's doing a great job at just trying to be a team with Hank all the time, not, you know, which she did before, but even more so now that they're retired. And I think her jokes have gotten a lot more funnier. I think the writers have done a great job at writing her just even more funnier than they did in the beginning. She was hilarious in the original series, and honestly, it's weird calling this a revival or a reboot because it really is just a season added on to the actual series. It's not like a separate show where you have to go into, you know, another spot in order to get to it, like some revivals or reboots. It really is a brand new season on the whole list of the show. So I think that's really cool. That just makes it feel like it really is like a continuation and you know, a part of everything else. But I thought that was just really cool and awesome. You know, like I said, the writing is just fantastic. The people writing these characters know these characters, and they've done such a fantastic job, and I think all the good reception from the fans is 100% deserved. If you can't tell by now, my overall review on this show is that it's fantastic. It's great from beginning to where I'm at now, which is episode 7. I got a few more episodes to go, and I intend to slowly enjoy those and just savor them for all they are. This show has, like I said, hit every single nail on the head that I think it intended to do. This is just one of the few times that a revival or a reboot just goes extremely well. If you haven't taken the time to check it out, I definitely would say give it your time. Give it a few episodes, and you know, if it doesn't give you that old feeling of the old one, then I don't know what to tell you. But I certainly feel it, and I'm happy they really, really knocked it out of the park with this. I appreciate any time you spent watching my show. Thank you, and I hope to see you again.